answering your questions and diving a little deeper. This is the Midweek Rewind.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Midweek Rewind. My name is Matt, and I'm looking forward to a special episode today. We've got something a little bit different in the works. As you might notice, Brent is not with us, but I've got some friends of mine. I'm joined by the Oelze brothers. How about that? We got John and Mark Oelze, and a lot of you probably know John. You might not know Mark super well, but if you joined us for church this past Sunday, Mark was one of the counselors who joined us to talk through just the crazy season that we're in. And so, Mark, thank you for spending some time with us today. If you're watching live, we'll, as always, we're taking your questions. Got those pulled up right here. We love to talk with you. And so please, if you have questions, feel free to type them in. We love to chat with you. But before I forget, speaking of our very special guest, someone brought this to my attention this morning. If you're a regular watcher of the Midweek Rewind, you know that I usually have a little action figure with me, like right here. And so today, since we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we got all four Gospels covered this morning. So I love it. So, hey, Mark, before we get too deep here, if people don't know you very well, you want to give a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Great to be here. Yeah, I'm a marriage and family counselor. Have been doing that for just a little over 30 years. And more significantly, the last 10 years or so, I've been doing a lot of work in the area of communication and conflict resolution. And that's my passion now, is to help us to learn how to communicate, how to resolve conflict, how to actually have conversations over our conflict rather than arguments. And that's a prime time that we're what we have to offer for these days today, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Mark, thanks for joining us today. And for this past Sunday, it was a really great conversation with our counselors who joined us. And John, I think most people watching probably know you, but I know that people may not know that you actually have a counseling background and you have a counseling degree. So yeah, you're obviously, your input is going to be super helpful today too. So thank you for joining us as well, John.
I'm glad to be here. This is kind of fun to be on this side of the camera and see what this is really like. So
yeah, it's awesome. So let's just go ahead and dive in here. So hopefully people watching were able to watch the sermon or the message on this past Sunday where we talked about this. But I mean, goodness, who would have thought that 2020 would be where we are today? I saw a meme or a video or something that was like, remember the Australian wildfires? Like an entire continent was on fire this year. And that's probably not going to make the top 5 stories of the year. Like things just get crazier and crazier and crazier. So obviously coronavirus shook all of us, and we've been going through the race protests and the riots and the demonstrations. And Mark, maybe I'll start with you. This is just a crazy time where people might be dealing with anxiety and stress and anger notched up way more than they're used to feeling. Especially with your extensive counseling background, are you seeing that? And how are you handling this season that we're in?
Ooh, that's a big question, but I absolutely believe that is happening at all different levels. Interestingly enough, my counseling practice dropped the first week or two. I think when the COVID hit, I think maybe everybody just kind of pulled back and said, what are we going to do? And then shortly thereafter, my clientele just started rising. I think it was just an indication of people struggling and with all aspects of the ways in which this is affecting us. And so, yeah, surely has had a significant effect. And it has on all of us, has on me, myself as well. I'm sure all three of us have had to deal with levels of anxieties that we haven't had to address for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so with the rest of our time, I know today's going to go fast, so I'll try to keep us moving here. But one of the main topics that you guys talked about on Sunday was anger. And anger for all of us probably comes out in different ways. We're probably angry about different things. But all of us, probably varying degrees about various topics, are dealing with some amount of anger. So John, maybe I'll toss to you this time. One thing that we talked about on Sunday was that anger by itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. And one thing that I remember from Sunday, Matt Gallagher said something along the lines of, sometimes anger is actually the best way for us to express sadness. And I thought that was interesting. So what do you think, John? If people are feeling anger rise up a little bit more than usual? What can we do to keep that in a healthy way?
Yeah, I certainly think that the last part of what you just said is how do we keep it in a healthy way? Because anger can be a healthy response, but it can also, and more often, leads to unhealthy response as we're engaging in relationships with other people. So for me, the biggest thing to think through is what is going on beneath the surface of my anger? Why am I angry? And just being able to take a minute when I'm angry with somebody else, take a minute and just kind of stop and breathe and think through what is really going on. Why am I angry? Is it because they aren't hearing me? Is it because they aren't accepting what I'm saying? What is really going on beneath the surface? And that is so helpful for me to then be able to figure out how do I go from here and how do I move forward in a healthy way and not lash out and cause more damage.
And I think all of us know what it's like to be angry at a person, right? But I think this season is strange that people might be feeling anger towards a system or the country or just the situation where we're in where we have to stay home. Like we're angry at something that we can't really communicate with. So Mark, is that true, do you think? And how do we deal with anger if it isn't interpersonal, but it's kind of this bigger level of anger that we're not used to dealing with?
Sure. So I think of a couple of different things. One is, Matt, as far as we thinking about what again brings about anger, and I think a couple of things in my mind. One is that when we all want life to go a certain way, we think of it. We think about that from the moment our feet hit the ground when we get out of bed. We want life to go a certain way, and when it doesn't, we can be angry. It leads to a sense of anger, different levels of anger, irritation, frustration, or ultimately all encompassed under the umbrella of anger. When life's not going my way, I'm like, I don't like this. I want it to go a certain way. And we're living in a world right now that's not going in the way we want. We don't want the world to be experiencing what we are. We don't want to be quarantined at home. We don't want to have all the demonstrations and the unrest as a nation. So we have this sense in which it's not going the way we want it to. And we're angry about it, and in a very real way. Again, it's not only it's not going the way we don't want it to, but we want it to go the way we want it to, and we're not in control. Mm-hmm. And that's what's frustrating about it as much. We can't just tweak it and make it go away. Mm-hmm. And so we are left with this state of existence of things happening the way we don't want them to happen, not in control. What do we do? And ultimately, as followers of Christ, it's a moment in time when perhaps more than ever else, we are called to really take what is it we know about truth and scriptures and apply them in very practical ways. And on some level, part of what that means today is it means to say, okay, God, I don't have control over this. We give it over to you. And Lord, we have to say, Lord, you are the one who's in control, and may we learn what it means to trust you in a greater way at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what an incredible opportunity as well for us to take that, because all of us are feeling that, including our neighbors and our friends and so forth, and to be able to have dialogue like that with our neighbors in just expressing that it's okay for us to be frustrated and experience some anger over that. But then the fact that as Christians, like Mark said, we have that hope in helping the people, that our neighbors who may not have that hope, to understand a little bit more of how we can have peace on some level in the midst of all that's going on.
Very good, John.
And I'm kind of thinking back to like the steps of grief, like one of the first steps of grief is accepting, and I kind of feel like anger, especially in this season, like you were saying, Mark, we can't control it. There's nothing we can do about it. So I wonder if the first step is just accepting and taking a minute to, okay, this is where we are. This is what life is going to be. My plans aren't working how I want them to go. Okay, now let's kind of take a step forward. Again, I'm not a counselor. I'm making this up as I talk.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right on. I think that there is that acceptance of that which we cannot control. And again, as a follower of Christ, we can say we know the one who is. And there's we can step back and say that there's another story taking place, we are a part of a greater story, and we have to sit back and say, God, what is a story that you are unfolding that we are a part of? Yeah.
I love that other story, larger story that's going on, because, even the other night I was thinking that, boy, this is just not how I anticipated life going, and I mean, and with the future, who knows how it is going to happen, but it's a different story than how I pictured things happening. And for me to come to a point of being okay with that, it again puts me out of control, but I do have the ability to, as a follower of Christ, to place my faith and trust in God in the midst of all that is going on, and go, okay, this is where my faith really needs to stand out, that I am going to trust that there is a God who loves me and cares for me in the midst of everything that's happening, and I'm going to trust the larger story.
Yeah, that's really good.
Matt, if I could jump in more to
Sure.
the kind of anger we're talking about here is perhaps a bit more geared towards the COVID stuff, but the racial struggles that our nation is in the midst of. Another reason that we experience anger is when we are wronged by another, we feel it's natural to feel anger.
Yep.
And the racial tension we're experiencing, I think, really on both sides is and the growing anger with that is because of the feeling of being wronged. Again, African Americans having felt being wronged for years and years and years, and generations back, and still yet finding themselves in situations over and over again here in 2020, where it's still taking place, where as a culture, people group, they're experiencing being wronged again. So there's a lot of anger coming up. And then on the flip side, when sometimes that anger gets out of control and there's rioting and damage and looting and all kinds of stuff, then there's other people who are angry because they're feeling wronged.
Right.
And so what do we do with all of us, or all the different aspects of people being wronged? How do we deal with that? And it's become on all of us to get in, to do what we can to right the wrongs. And that's where, again, boy, as a church, I think we can really can shine or not, depending on what we do with that. I'm thinking the same thing for me. How can I help bring about right where wrong has been? And I can help or not.
Yep.
I'm being personally challenged.
Yep. I am too. Yep. And I hope that's some of the good that comes out of this, is that everyone, I think, is having to pause and think about things they weren't thinking about a few weeks ago. And that's probably a good thing. I want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. But going back to the rioting and the looting and everything, that's one of the sources of anxiety for a lot of people. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about anxiety. That's something that I feel like there's a lot of research that my generation and people younger than me are fighting anxiety more than previous generations. Social media is probably a big culprit. I heard something really interesting on a podcast that I wonder if you guys could talk into. This person said that for thousands of years, humans spent their entire life in groups of about 100 or fewer people. It's a relatively new phenomenon for me to have. I have 1,000 Facebook friends, and all of us have constant access to Twitter. We have constant access to YouTube, and this isn't a political statement, but 20 years ago, we didn't know what President Clinton was thinking every minute. Right now, we know what President Trump is thinking every minute. And we don't, like 20 years ago, I don't know if what happened in Minneapolis happened in Minneapolis 20 years ago. I don't know if we would have protests in Wichita, Kansas, because we probably wouldn't have seen the video the next day. And we don't know we didn't know the details of what was happening in Paris and, even one generation ago. And so to me, it's almost weirdly helping me to know that we weren't meant to know all of, like, our bodies weren't built to know as much as we know today. Like our emotions and our brains aren't wired to handle the weight that we're kind of being forced to handle now. So again, I'm not a counselor. The person I was listening to was not a counselor, but that makes sense to me. What do you two think of that, and how does that play into anxiety that we might be feeling?
Mark, you got like I'm not sure who's going to go here.
Sure. No, I was just thinking, like, yeah, absolutely. There's only so much of us that can go around, and just from a very practical level, you know, as a parent, I remember when we had our first child, and it was a little bit, you know, turning things upside down a little bit from what we were used to. Matt, you can talk about that from this last couple of years, or I forget how old your little one is, but
He's 2.
then you bring a second one in, a third one, you know, and it just begins to get a bit overwhelming. I talked with someone recently where they had, well, I know somebody who has 9 kids, and somebody else who had like twice that even. And you're thinking, oh my word, just the numbers of just relationships in a family can be overwhelming. You add 1,000 friends. Are you serious, Matt? I'm thinking, now they're not really all your friends, are they?
Right.
But that many connections, overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Just on a very simple, practical level, even like that.
And I think too, the other thing to me that stands out is that with the social media as it is, it's not like we're getting bombarded every moment of the day with all this positive, exciting, encouraging, blessing kind of work. You know, I mean, if that was happening, I don't think it would be as overwhelming to us, you know, but what we're being bombarded with constantly is all this negative stuff that's going on. And it's like, holy cow, it just keeps going and going and going. And I go, man, how much farther can we as a country, as a culture, as a people go? And so that's where if I'm watching too much social media, I'll tank, is because of all the negativism of what I'm seeing. I think the opposite might be the case if it was all stories about how people are blessing, encouraging, and loving and caring for other people. That might motivate me more and encourage me more, to even be more loving and kind myself. It's this negative constantly that is getting me.
And that's a great transition, Mark. I want to ask you a question. On Sunday, one thing that you said, I think you had heard this from someone else, but they challenged you to, every time you're tempted to look at your phone, instead pull out your Bible. And that really, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. And honestly, for about a week or so, I deleted Facebook from my phone, and I haven't got on. I just now shared this video, but that's the first time I've been on Facebook for about a week, because I just couldn't handle it. I just knew myself well enough that, like you were saying, John, I just couldn't handle all the negativity I was seeing. So Mark, do you want to tell us, where did you get that idea, and how is that going for you? The idea of cracking up your Bible every time you're tempted to look at social or news or whatever.
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, it was on a Facebook post.
Oh, that's funny.
Or Messenger. I think it was Messenger, something like that. So it was some kind of social media post where I saw that. So interestingly enough, it has been a very interesting experience. So that was about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 even. And I think I might have mentioned to you on Sunday when I talked about that, I have memorized more verses, more portions of scripture since then, since I was a kid. You know, some days I practice the idea, more days than others, where I actually have all the different verses now pictured on my phone, screen capture and so forth.
Yep.
So I go there first, and half the time, I don't know, a third of the time, maybe more. But it's actually made some real significant impact on me, in the sense in which, again, I'm asking myself,
oh, I might have lost Mark here.
Perfect timing there. You ask yourself,
changing me.
There you go. You're back. We lost you for just a second, Mark, but you're back. So that's good.
Okay.
So, hey, John, maybe I'll toss to you for just a minute. I know, again, with your background too, anxiety is just a very real thing. And again, I think every person on earth is feeling some anxiety, because everyone's normal is out the window. So what are just some kind of basic things that we can do if we start feeling anxious? Where can we start to try to right that?
So a couple things that come to mind. One is again, just to take that moment to try and breathe, get away from what might be causing the anxiety of the moment, and ask if you're able to kind of ask some of those questions of, what is going on, why is that happening, what's taking place there. For me, just getting away from so much of that social media. I mean, is that a cause of it? And turning away from that, just as a follower of Christ, taking a moment or two or 10 just to pray and just to say, God, I need your help right now. I need to be able to need you to help me to process this and deal with this. And so prayer, reading the word, connecting with somebody else, and just talking about it. It's like, man, I mean, I don't know what to do with this. And a lot of times what we're finding is that we're not alone. I mean, we kind of think that we're alone in this as we're facing this anxiety. But to talk to somebody else and realize, okay, let's talk about this together and see. I think those are huge steps that we can take.
Yeah, that's good. And Mark, maybe I'll let you jump in, but in addition to that, I wonder if some of all of this is maybe even more elevated because we haven't been able to spend time with our friends and family.
Yeah.
I think we're starting from a place where we're lonely and we just miss what used to be normal, and maybe that's even ratcheting up the anxiety even more. So Mark, do you think that's true? And what else can we do to try to handle that anxiety?
No, I think that is good. I think we are fortunate to at least be in a day of technology where we can stay connected still yet, even in the midst of the big disconnect. I think we're very fortunate with that. But I think there's certainly, John, your points about getting with somebody, I think that's huge. I don't know. I was going to say, if anger is the result of wanting a life to go a certain way and it's not, anxiety is the result of wanting a life to go a certain way and I don't know whether it will or not. There's this great uncertainty. So again, how do we deal with that? At different levels, one aspect is for us to again accept the fact that there are all kinds of things in life that are uncertain, and we all have to learn how to accept that and deal with that. And what is certain around us that we can focus on, that we can rest in and trust in and so forth. That's on one kind of what help. The other help is, again, getting back to us as a Christ follower. Again, one thing that we do know for certain is that someone is the author of the story, and we know that over time things will make sense, and in time his story, the best story, will be played out in the best of ways.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of coming back practically to trusting in that.
Yep. Easier said than done, but yeah, that's definitely good advice.
And I think too, just something as simple as going for a walk, leaving the situation that you're in and getting out, going for a walk, kind of helps to get a fresh perspective and just breathe a little bit more.
One more thing I remember from Sunday, I think it was Matt Gallagher who used the verse, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about himself. And I remember him talking about how there's some wisdom in not projecting too much into the future because, well, first of all, you can't control it. Second, especially now, things change so quickly. There's no worrying does no good because things will change tomorrow anyway. The governor might change the law again. Who knows? But I think a lot of people, like myself, I'm a planner. Like I want to think, okay, next week I want to get ready to do this. Like the church is reopening, so before that happens, I need to do this. So how do you balance being responsible and planning, but also not worrying about tomorrow? Does that make sense? How can we balance those things?
John, you're more the planner than I am. Take it away.
Oh, there's some good stories on that, but this isn't the time for that. So yeah, great question, Matt. I think it's the reality that what's behind the motive in what I'm planning. If I mean everything, it all deals with motive so many times. If my motive is at least I can control this situation, then I'm just going to get more anxious when things change. But if I'm able to actually go, okay, at this time, here's the plan when the church is going to reopen. So now I can make some plans for that, realizing and knowing that things may change, and that's okay. And then I'm all right with that. I mean, you were in that meeting, Matt, when we were planning to reopen the church, and there are several of us around the table. And in the middle of that meeting, Linda's sitting next to me, and she, says, "Look at your phone," and I'm going, "Oh no, it's blowing up with the fact of it. All of our plans are changing." And it's like, okay, guys, we're back to the drawing board again here. And so I think I hate to say this because I don't want to be too simplistic, but the motivation behind what I'm doing plays out so much of the time. And if I can just not be planning or organizing because of the fact that I got to stay in control, but I can plan and organize to do the best I can given the situation I'm in, that's the key thing.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Mark?
Good. Yeah, no, it's good, John. It was really good. The image comes to mind again is of, I put something in my hand. I'm trying to get the camera there. Put something. There it is. Put something in my hand. I have my extra mouse. I put it in my hand. But if that's something in life that I've got to have this, then I hold it really tightly. If my plans are something, I've got to have this. It's got to work this way in order for me to be okay. Then I'm going to hold it really tightly, and when things change, I'm really going to be not doing well. Mm-hmm. If I say, "Here's my plans. Here's something I put in my hand," and I hold it loosely, and I say, "Hope that works," yada yada yada. But if it doesn't, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. And again, I would say this by way for anybody who might be watching this who doesn't know the experience of having a relationship with God or a relationship with Jesus. There's 1,001 reasons why I would want you to have that, to know that. But one of them is I can be okay with my plans not working okay because I believe in and have faith and trust in that there is somebody who does have all plans in his hand, and he promises that they're going to be ultimately good. So I can go like that and hold what's in my hand loosely.
Yeah, that's really good. And we're running out of time already. I've got at least 2 more things I want to try to hit in the next couple of minutes. So the last big thing we talked about on Sunday was just relationships, and how we mentioned, husbands, wives, and kids are probably spending way more time together, which is probably great and probably maybe challenging. I want both of you to speak to this, but Mark, maybe I'll start with you again. This is kind of your wheelhouse. I know I work with you sometimes, and you've got your whole pledge talk thing, which is right in this alley. So again, we don't have very much time, but you want to quickly just give us a overview of what that is and how we can maybe use that when relationships get challenging?
So I've done 30 years of marriage counseling, seen over and over again couples not know how to communicate well, particularly during tough times. And out of that, we developed what we call Pledge, which is a 6-step process. It's a guide to literally take you one step at a time in a sequential order, how to talk through the difficulty. And when people get it, it changes their lives, changes their relationship. And I would say, you want to learn about it? Can I make a pitch, Matt?
Sure.
You want a free way just to figure out what it is? Go to pledgetalk.com and you can get a 6-day free email course. Explains all about it. I believe it will be very, very helpful to anyone who really learns the process. Pledgetalk.com. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, great. I just send the link in the comment section. So if you're watching live, you should be able to see a link there in the comments. Yeah, I encourage you to check it out. It is a great process that I know will be really helpful to people watching. So, okay, we're almost out. I've got kind of, I have to admit, it's kind of a selfish question, but I think it's something that a lot of people are dealing with. Just the political stuff right now is just out of control. it seems like it just gets ickier and ickier by the day. And I know personally, I've got people very close to me who are very opinionated, and they are trying to convince me of this, or they think this is a lie, but this is the truth. And I need to watch this video because this video is not real, but this one is. And we can't trust them, but we can trust them. And it's just exhausting. And I think I'm not alone. I think a lot of people are in that. And talking about Facebook, you can't go a day without some new video going viral of someone saying something. So if people are in this season and they're just weary and they're not sure how to deal with relationships that are being challenged because of or maybe it's the race thing, maybe they lean one way with the race conversation and someone else leans a different way. When something really important, when people that are important to you have a different opinion, how can we navigate that well? Either one of you. A really easy question.
Hey, one thing that I had lunch yesterday with 4 people. 3 of them were African American, and I said to them in our lunch meeting, I said, "Hey, can I just ask an honest question here? I mean, I'm just trying to understand." And so it led to a very interesting conversation about all that is going on right now, from Black Lives Matter to the rioting to just everything. And it was just very fascinating because I took an honest step of just engagement. And so I think if we just do that, even Matt, I think that would help. And even if it's just if somebody is, coming at it from a different angle, just to simply say, you know what, just being honest with you, we're going to have different angles, and we're probably not going to agree here. And that's okay. We still love each other. We're still followers of Christ. Let's keep our perspective. Let's keep our focus.
Yeah, that's good. Anything to add, Mark?
What's perhaps most disconcerting to me in this last 2 weeks is I feel like there's far more reactivity going on than anything else. And I want to suggest, oh my word, there are so many different angles, so many different aspects, so many different elements of this whole thing. We need to sit back. We need to just put everybody on pause, put the country on pause, and let's develop some forums, if you will, where we can sit back and really learn to listen. I wish on some level, even nationally, or even a city, we could set up some forums and just say, let's have some discussions where but we're in the process, we're really going to learn to listen and listen to learn. Because I feel like there's so much. There's so many things.
Yeah.
The art of listening is huge. And I agree. I love the idea of forums and all that sort of thing. My only thing on that is that I think that it could potentially lead to just people having platforms to share their opinion and just to vocalize it. And we don't learn the reality of the art of listening. And yet the Bible speaks so much to that, of being, slow to speak and quick to listen. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but only such a word as is good for the need of that particular moment in time, that it may give grace to those who hear. That means I have to be listening to be able to know what I can communicate.
Yeah.
Huge.
Absolutely.
That is good. And we just mentioned the pledge talk thing. Mark, I'll give you another plug here. So pledge is an acronym, and pause and listen are the first 2 steps in your process, Mark. And that's,
pause and listen.
All of them, all 6 steps are important, but I think it just seems like those 2 are missing right now. People are just quick to just say what they want to say without listening, and that's probably a root of a lot of the problems that we're facing.
That's my biggest concern right now.
Yeah. Well, you guys, our time is up. I knew this would happen. I've got a couple quick things to share at the end here, but either of you have any kind of last parting words before we begin to wrap up here today?
I just say thanks, Matt. Thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for the opportunity to share. And I'm blessed to be able to do this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Yep, I agree. Thanks.
Cool. All right, great. Well, I rendered you speechless. I didn't know that was possible. That's great.
He's talking about you again, John, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, I just know that if I go much longer, he's going to make it down to my office, and he's going to go, John, we went over time.
We got to stop.
Yeah.
No. Well, just as we wrap up here, this is actually a good transition. So this Sunday, we're starting a new sermon series at First MB all about this. We're talking about anxiety and stress and decision making, and just or it's called mind games. So it's when we have trouble just getting on our own mind about how to deal with these kind of things. It's right on this topic. And it's funny, we planned the counselor roundtable weeks ago before we knew all this was going to be coming. We planned this series almost a year ago, not knowing where we would be, and it's just we need it now. And so if you're watching now, or if you're listening to the podcast, please join us on Sunday, or watch later if you want to. We're going to be talking more about this with Pastor Brent, and he'll be back with us on Midweek Rewind next week. But it's just a tough season where all of us need a little bit of help, and that's okay. Another thing I wanted to say that we didn't get to, but I think Mark, maybe you said it's okay to not be okay, and I think all of us are there in various ways, and so. Yeah, just hang in there. If you're watching or listening, we're grateful that you took some time with us today. Hope you'll be able to join us on Sunday and back next Thursday. But for now, Mark and John, thank you both of you. And once again, here's our friend Luke. We got all Gospels covered. So, thanks again to both of you. You two have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks to everybody watching. We'll hope to see you on Sunday. See you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. Matt and Pastor Brent go live on the First MB Church Facebook page every Thursday at noon. If you can't watch live, the archive is available anytime on Facebook, YouTube, or the First MB app. If you prefer to listen on the go, you can also subscribe to the podcast by searching for the Midweek Rewind in your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Midweek Rewind.